Hey guys, a little bit windy outside for a fly, so I've pulled the cowl off. Thought I'd take the opportunity just to answer a few questions from you guys out there. Hope you enjoy this. Alright, so the first thing you'll notice, the Yankee hat, it's gone. Had a few complaints. Anyway, that was the original Yankee hat from Yankee Stadium up there in the Bronx, up there in Manhattan. Anyway, we'll get into the Cruzer. So I've got my list of comments here. The first one people asked about was the Firewall layout. Shall I show you that? So while the cow's off, I've got my trusty balsa wood stick here, so it's not going to short out anywhere. Start at the front if you like. So the plenum chambers, did a fair bit of work on those. Oil line, I know people ask about the Firewall, we'll get to that. I like to keep everything nice and neat. And anywhere there's a chance to chafe, like I have this Adele clamp here, just with gravity and these relatively heavy cables can drop down. Obviously there's a gap under there at the moment, but I just put a bit of spy wrap on there just to protect any potential chafing in the future. What else we got? Starter motor with the cables running back. I got my master solenoid and my start solenoid. If you do order these on Aircraft Spruce, they are different. One's continually on, the other one's intermittent or whatever, so a start solenoid. Consideration I had there, and I asked a few people about it, with G loads or a heavy landing. With a heavy landing, I didn't necessarily want my start contactor to the starter motor, to shunt on if I bounce the nose wheel, because of the way these things work with a spring, but apparently the spring's pretty strong. So I've mounted them in that orientation. The manual does give you several options in which layout you can have them. You could lay them on the shelf there if you like. But one consideration with those, was imagine a heavy landing, especially the start contactor. You don't want that being made while the engine's running as you touch down or going over rough terrain. This is my oil line here, just my oil bottle. You can see after 10 hours of flying, the Jabiru I find, I won't pull the dipstick out, but it holds 3.3 litres and then it sort of self-settles. So you just let it spit out what it doesn't want, and this will fill up with glug over time. So every 25 hours on your servicing, just empty the overflow bottle. It's got a standpipe in it. If it does happen to fill right up, then it'll go out and make a mess of your aeroplane out the belly down there. So while we're on this side, mounted my battery. I use an Odyssey 625. Good cranking amps. Engine fires up, 1 or 2 blades, even when cold. And just an earth to the Firewall. I did beef up the Firewall because it's relatively soft. So on the back, I ran a couple of L angles for this fiberglass tub to mount the battery on for obvious reasons. My main fuel line, which is down the bottom there, comes out to a 90, comes across to my fuel filter, a 90 down, 90 across to my 3 psi FADEC fuel pump, and then from the fuel pump, the electronic fuel pump, up this hose here to the Jabiru EDP, engine driven pump, fuel pump, and secured with I've secured everything so it's rigid but leaves slack in the lines. Nothing can rub. I've gone a bit berserk with the Adele clamps or P clamps. What else have we got? I take my RPM off my magneto through a 120 ohm resistor. I have to learn all this stuff. Then with the MGL, I've got my RDAC over here. RDAC seems to be holding in well. So I've got my 6 EGTs, 6 CHTs, oil pressure, oil temp, RPM, and fuel gauges come to this, which should add up. You do have little dim switches and settings for the RDAC itself and for you to drive your gauges. Voltage regulator tucked up under here. And my airbox, if I have my time again, you can see this is fairly close here. I drop the airbox, this is the smaller airbox for Jabiru, I drop it down another inch or so just to give me a bit more clearance there. You're still using the scat, sorry, the scat hose comes to the knacker duct, so I made myself up just some little bungs. Knacker duct seems to be working okay now, we played with that at the start, and I shortened the, it doesn't look fantastic, but I wanted to get the wrinkles out of the scat hose, so I shortened it about 4 inches. I had a nice curve there, but when it's curved, like this one up here, it gets more wrinkles in it, gives you a swirling effect, and that plays havoc with the engine. Also, I've got a cobra head fitted in there with a crosshair in it to straighten the air up, so this seems to be working rather well now. Another consideration is your hockey pucks and your nose wheel going up and down. All relatively simple, and see with the Jabiru being such a light engine, I think it's 188 pounds ready to go. It's a long way forward, so there's plenty of room back in here to service it or fit stuff, whatever you like to do. Nice big hole to get the cowl on and off. I put aluminium tape as well just around my exhaust, which I added, didn't add anything to the length, but I got the exhaust guys at the shop, just a motorbike or auto shop, to put a 45 bend, and they welded it on there for me. My throttle bracket, the extension arm, seems to be holding up good to a ball link on the carby. Also on the carby, if you can see down in here, put the extension arm, I think it's 1 3/4 extension arm on the carby to give me more travel at the front. The also the hockey puck tension, basically the aircraft sitting on the ground, I've got about 1/4 inch, where is it? The fork sits about 1/4 inch off the bottom of the black block at the bottom. And as far as the layout in the cockpit, nice and simple, keep everything out of the way. You don't need starter buttons up there, we covered that ergonomically. I look out the window, press the starter button, and then that's done for the day. Throttle, just a standard setup. Elevator trim. So I've got push the nose down and pull the nose up, or bottom. So down at the top, up at the bottom. A bit like the RC days. When I fly, it's just those 4 switches up, fuel pump is up, and I've got a spare over here, which leads me to my next one. People asked about navs and strobes, so I have got a spare switch here which is wired up. The wires run up and basically connect up in the wing root, and they run right out to the tips. So on the wing tips, if I was to drill a hole, there's wires positioned in there to fit nav lights. I didn't go any strobes or anything, that's half the reason. I did my white bands on the wing, keep it simple, silly, and people have commented how it stands out when I taxi, etc. Alright, my header tank seems to be working really well. I've got a slight bit of paint coming off around there. I think it was the grease has melted. I put a little tiny bit of grease to get the hose on and then nipped it up. Yeah, I've got barbs and hoses and hose clamps, and I'm hoping it's just the grease that's sort of dribbled out and upset the paint on the header tank, which is just rattle can paint. My fuel system's going really well with the check valve each side. Stops the cross feeding, and also flying with the ball centered. So one other question I had, flying maximum was, I think I got about 106, 108 knots. The RPM, I get about 3050, 3050 RPM flat out. When I'm cruising around lately, I just fly about 2600, 2750 to go somewhere. The aircraft sort of tells me what RPM it wants to sort of rev at, without, depending on the conditions. just smooth it out, make it easy on yourself. Alright, another question I had was on aileron trim. So the aircraft slowly, or as I'm getting used to it, it's rolling left slightly. You get a bit of fuel imbalance, but I've levelled the tanks, and then I went along and gingerly squished the trailing edge just to try that. Didn't go berserk, like you can't even tell. Didn't have much effect. So from my RC days, you know, and all the guys that are watching that fly RC models, bit of aileron trim, because you've got a servo in the wing, just an eye-end adjustment, nice and easy, say 2 turns, or modern day transmitters, you can adjust your trim. What I've learnt with the Jabiru, trying to trim that out, and bear in mind this aircraft's got flaperons fitted, so the whole trailing edge, the whole trailing edge moves as one, and also as a flaperons. So you think it'd just be an eye-end adjustment. The problem you have, and I know most of you probably watching this are aware of this, the aileron flies, aerodynamically, flies to, let's call it aerodynamic neutral. For argument's sake, it's there. If you do an eye-end adjustment and raise it up or down, when you fly, aerodynamics, because there's no servo holding the flaperon, it'll just fly back to that aerodynamic neutral. So all it does in effect is move the joystick, the control stick. So you make an eye-end adjustment, this will just naturally fly back to where it wants, equal out with the other side, and all your eye-end adjustment has done has made your joystick crooked. So what did I do next? I've just cut a bit of rubber. This is P-seal that you'd put on your window, sort of double-sided tape, I guess. And I started with 4-inch piece. Now I've got a 6-inch piece on there. Causes a bit of drag, pushes this up, other side down, gives me a little bit of right aileron. So it works opposite to what you would think. So drag on this side, pushes that up. Aircraft's going to roll right. That seems to be working really well. Again, it's experimental, so don't take my word for it, but easy to adjust, and got my aeroplane flying nice and straight and doesn't look untoward without a big... The other option was put a metal tab on there that you can bend. Oil canning. So the Zenith aircraft, I guess, are known for oil canning when you fly out of trim. I expected worse, to be honest. I've got a Bose, A20 headset, the noise cancelling headset. Don't notice it a lot, but what it is the drumming effect down the back. I do notice it when you land, when you get a nice landing and you're in the rotating or the flare stage, just before touchdown, the initial few landings I thought the wheels were on the ground because you get a bit of a rumble, and it's obviously the air breaking away from possibly the top surface of the wing, the sides of the fuselage, and you get this, it's a funny sort of noise, but I thought the wheels were on the ground. When you do a nice greaser and you don't get the weight of the aircraft but the wheels just start rolling, then I got a bit of a shock when I was still 3 feet in the air, and then it finally touched down. So you do get a bit of noise, don't worry about it. It's not like a tennis ball or anything banging around down the back. It's just a, I don't know, well, not a vibration, just a little drumming effect. I actually like it because it tells you when you're nearing the stall or you're flying uncoordinated. If you do fly uncoordinated, it'll let you know. So yeah, in essence, don't worry about the oil canning. I think it's a good thing. It's like a stall warning. And it's not as bad as I thought it was going to be. Yeah, that's the oil canning. Jabiru. People have asked for a Jabiru Cruzer comparison. I'll save that for another video. We'll go for a fly in both. I've actually bought some GoPro fittings today, more clamps, etc. So I'll wire up the Cruzer now that I'm comfortable. We'll get some GoPro action and do some reporting from the air, and same with the Jabiru. So for those who don't know, Jabiru 160, that's got the 4-cylinder 2200 Jabiru in it, Gen 4, and the Cruzer's got the 6-cylinder Gen 4 Jabiru 3300. The engine cowl, does the cowl come with the kit? I believe so, if you're quick enough. When you order your Zenith aircraft kit, talk to Zenith. They can organise Firewall forward, it's on their website, for things like obviously Jabiru, Rotax I believe, UL power, Viking engines, and potentially some others along those lines. So I didn't, and I sort of got caught out, I guess, had to order the cowl, and I covered that in previous videos. But if you know what engine you're going to fit from the start, which is beneficial, you can start getting your parts, your Firewall forward, all together. This Jabiru engine cowl came from Jabiru USA, and I had it shipped over to Australia with the top cowl over there on the bench at the moment. So organise, ideally, if you're going to build, try and work out which engine you're going to install first. It'll save you a lot in the long run. If you're in the States, and potentially you can order the tail kit, the wing kit, the fuselage kit, etc., and the finishing kit, not so much an issue, but in Australia you just want the one big box to come by ship over to you. Alright, another question I had was the magnetometer, the compass. I've mounted mine on that bridge you can see up there. So I built just out of L angles. Let's get in there a bit. There you go, just out of scrap L angle. I hung it down to get it away from as much metal as you can. I know it's on a metal frame, and I used plastic zip ties to tie it on. It's got an arrow on the box to line up with the centre axis of the aircraft, so I was a bit particular with that, I guess, and yeah, put it on there nicely. So in that position there, I get a good compass heading, and my artificial horizon seems to be working okay. I did mention previously, probably could do with an L angle running vertically on the back of this. In flight, at certain conditions, I get a bit of, this just vibrates a bit, catches my eye when it flutters around both sides. Alright guys, quick down and dirty on the Cruzer. If you've got any more questions, let me know. I'm about to rig up the GoPros, and when the weather fines up a bit, I guess I don't want to become a fair weather flyer, but because I live so close to the airport, it's nice to just fly in good weather, I guess. Thanks for watching. See you on the next one.